Welcome back to MagusintheMedia. I say this a lot that, oh boy, do we have a special one for everyone out there. But tonight, I mean it more than ever in this day where we have MagusintheMedia radio show. What we got is a nice broadcast this evening with my friend Twisted Bricks. He's the creator of Twisted Bricks. It's Christian. He is his own small demiurge in the Platonic sense, crafting this beautiful realm. I find it so fascinating, so it's going to be a great conversation. Welcome, Christian. How are you?
I'm great, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, so I'm pretty psyched. I got my zombie head mug full of chamomile tea, so we're rocking and rolling.
Beautiful. No, I think that's definitely what's going to happen. And so what's fascinating about this whole thing and why it relates so hard just in my own life and yet to MagusintheMedia, because this fine gentleman right here has put together his own realm and then scripted. He's basically got a whole world, Twisted Bricks, using Legos as a stop, basically like a stop animation style. Is that what you got going on over there?
Yeah. So should I just give a little background?
I want it. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, I discovered stop motion as a preteen, early days of YouTube, just like saw what people were doing and started experimenting. And I got really into that kind of craft, just learning through trial by error. And then I ended up starting this series called the Lego Zombie Apocalypse. And I actually didn't really get the ball rolling with that until I was in college. I'd kind of set the stop motion thing down as a hobby. I was going to go be a teacher and study science and all this stuff. But I found some old footage and I started animating again. And I just was like, what if I just kept going with this? Like, what would unfold? And so it just became this kind of form of playful expression. I just created these characters, started expanding the universe. And long story short, I just never stopped. I just kept finding reasons to keep going with it. And so you had recurring characters, and I didn't really know where it was going to go when I started. But now we are it's been a decade really since I released the first episode of that. And we've released 2 full seasons. There's a whole time travel arc. There's been a bunch of community contests. So there's a lot of community created content that takes place in the cinematic universe we've created. We call it the Void War universe. And there's been a feature-length film called Gray Horizons, which we showed in the Fargo Theater in 2023. And currently I'm working on a sequel film. Gray Horizons was 90 minutes. Sequel might be longer, and it's definitely going to be more ambitious.
No, that's fantastic. That's amazing. And so what this man has done is basically taking Legos using stop-go animation and creating a whole realm that he creates in his living room, his bedroom, his workspace. And why it's so amazing is he took it from this idea of just wanting to create stories. You like Legos?
Yeah. Well, I have always loved just making stuff. It's always been just I got to make something. I have written songs, used to be into drawing, but and I've always loved creating Legos and building stuff, breaking sets, making my own. But the real gold mine was when I was I can make my own characters and movies. I can animate my own stories. And so it really is the act of creation itself that I have become obsessed with. I think it's just core to our being, is that we are creators. We are created and we are creators. You got the macrocosm and the microcosm. And I think everybody needs some form of creative expression in their life.
Yeah, no, of course. How long ago was it that you started doing this?
I started animating when I was probably 12 years old. And I'm now, so that's 18 years ago. So I've been in the game for some time.
No, that's amazing. And then why was it the Legos just as the art of the creation, the substance you're making it from? Did it just seem the easiest? Were you just already a Lego master, or what?
Yeah, well, I realized that I could, with stop motion, I could tell any story I wanted to tell. It was a medium that was very accessible. You can do it all out of your room, and you can get to expensive places with it. I've got this camera tracker now. I've got a nice lighting setup, and I've put a lot of money into like building huge sets. But when you get started, you can really tell any story using these little plastic puppets in a way that is just not accessible with like live action. I was kind of shy running a whole like live action production as a preteen or teenager or even a college kid is no easy feat. But stop motion, all you need to do is get some voice actors, enlist your friends. And so it was a super accessible way for me to kind of explore the act of creating and telling stories. And it's just, I never dreamed it would kind of get to this point. But it is, I don't know, a very profound act for me to be able to participate in it and in storytelling.
Yeah, nice, exactly. So everyone else, as you're continuing to listen, remember this man creating the brand Twisted Bricks, which is a whole mythology and universe, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is that what it's called? The Twisted Bricks universe?
Yeah, I kind of alternate between calling it the Twisted Bricks universe and the Void War universe, because really where the story is going is focused on this event called the Void War. So that's what I use more these days, because that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Nice. I like that. Very apropos for this day and age. The Void Wars, the great wars that we all find, which is creating a void within our hearts, right? Isn't that? That's kind of how I see it. So it's fascinating. So Christian, this great Demiurge creator on the planet of Earth, has created Twisted Bricks universe, which he puts out on the great YouTube, which you're watching right now. So after this beautiful evening show that we have for you tonight, make sure to head on over to this fine gentleman, because Twisted Bricks isn't just a small channel. He puts a lot of hard work into it, and the man's got, 100,000 subscribers. How many subscribers you got?
We're at 114K at this point.
114K subscribers. This isn't just a small channel. This is a Christian crushing it. And in his local town, he then was able to get one of the local amazing downtown theaters to then put it on their big screens. And so that's fascinating nonetheless. So this, is it the movie that you have this trailer for? Should we play a trailer from your movie that I found on YouTube so people can see what you do?
Yeah, that would be a ton of fun.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah, let's do that. Tons. Is it this one?
Yep, that's the best one, I would say.
Okay, great. Watch this, guys.
Eternal Kyo,
This is brilliant.
we call upon you in these dark hours. Huxley, I have an emergency assignment for you.
A combat assignment?
A security detail on ship.
So you're our freshly wounded protector, huh? You aren't the type to get trigger happy, are you?
Only with due reason, ma'am.
So, okay, that's a great place to pause that.
Yeah.
So this is quite amazing. So you're doing all this. You're doing all the Lego stuff. You're recording it, and then there's also clay in there, right? So you're creating clay figurines as other characters.
Yes, and it used to be clay exclusively, but for the sequel film, I actually have learned how to create latex puppets that are they're plugged in so the eyes will glow. And it's a lot more sturdy. It's more animatable. I had problems with the clay, but I like to think in my own headcanon, there's something pleasing about the fact that this has all existed physically, and in a sense, it all happened. The battles were played out on my table, frame by frame, but at an extremely slow rate. So
yeah. So you're kind of a time lord as well. Let's go back to this. No, I like that. We're gonna go into that right after this.
What if he is mostly human and he could be healed?
There's no cure for slag. You know that.
What is the last thing you can recall?
I told you, I don't remember.
Is that safe?
What? This is the command deck. I'm initiating protocol SG. Slag has infected the command floor and is spreading fast.
They can't make it. There's no way.
This is like this is like a fucking space horror.
Yeah, it kind of.
We're not alone in here.
Alien.
Everybody underestimates Slag. You can't stop the spread. That's why Protocol SG exists.
I swear to credit if they brought Slag onto our ship.
We don't know, Lieutenant.
You don't know?
What are you?
Run.
Oh, amazing. That was fantastic. Thank you. That's fantastic. Christian, so that is the trailer that was then for the movie that you put into the theater, correct?
That's right. Yep. An hour and a half long movie. So it was 3 years of work, I think, when all was said and done.
Yeah, that's amazing. How long did it take you to do all that?
You know, it's hard to like give you any. People ask me that a lot, and it's a question that I struggle to answer because I feel like I just don't think about it because it's what I'm always doing. Like most of my day, such a large percentage of my life is spent thinking about or creating the Void War universe or expanding it. And it's not just like, it is mostly the Lego stop motion. I think that part of it, I don't know, there's something about it. You know, I've often wondered, like, should I expand into like live action or animated stuff, or like, and I would obviously love to partner with a production company and do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there is something about like the Lego element where it's like we all created these like storylines with our toys as kids, and in some ways sometimes we feel like playthings of the gods. So there's something there where it's like envisioning these little plastic people as like caricatures of ourselves fighting these unimaginable forces of chaos and confusion and just terror. I don't know, it speaks to me.
Yeah, no, it should speak to you. Okay, fascinating. So I love this. So that was a brilliant trailer. What kind of genre do you think that is?
I would say cosmic horror is probably the closest thing to describing it. What the Void War is, it's this like 1,000-year war between humanity and this entity called Slag. And Slag, and the name was inspired by like dripping metal and also like thinking of like slugs, you know, not the British version of the term.
Yeah.
But Slag is this hive mind, you know, it is this mass of gray flesh that just expands across galaxies, consumes everything, and it's, you know, you can tell it's got this orange eye, and it can attack you psychically. It's a reality disrupting entity, like reality, like people's psyches fracture around it. And the main character Hux in my movie, he has experienced great tragedy. He's an orphan and lost his whole family to Slag, and that he has left him, who's a very sensitive person, very susceptible to this psychic distortion. And so he ends up having to team up with this naive apprentice psychic, you know, because in this war against this psychic creature, humanity has its own psychics to protect their forces.
Nice.
And so there's a lot of like in the story, this creation has been a lot of exploration for me. Everything I've learned, everything I've delved into, whether it's metaphysics or philosophy or UFOs, it always like I synthesize and I'm like, oh, how can I take what I've learned and like incorporate it into these stories and kind of like digest it that way. And one thing that I was reflecting on is that the Void War universe, there's a lot of feminine and masculine kind of dynamics or counterbalancing. And in this universe, you have the Unum, you have the Kionic forces. They have this god figure called Kio, and his forces are composed of the Unum Viras, which is like this masculine military force, and the Unum Series, which is this kind of organization of psychics who protect the military on the battlefield. And so it's been such a fun way to explore these different concepts. And just like, I don't know, the act of creating a universe is really exhilarating.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. The idea about the whole thing is quite brilliant. And why I like it so much is it kind of goes back to two different things that I myself have felt a large portion of my life. And then we learn in our philosophical, but also in our mystical traditions and our experiences, is that when you remember certain things, or an awakening in a certain way, or this discovery of something, or as Tolkien talked about, is that he discovered, Middle Earth. It wasn't something that he created from just mere fiction and mere nonsense. It was something that then it was like looking through a portal and witnessing the happenstance that happened around them at that same time. And that feeling, when it comes to it being like, I like the idea of it actually being something that you can witness and that is a real space. It's just within the mind's eye as it goes on, right? You're tapping into something when you created these things, don't you think?
Yeah, and it's what you said reminds me. I've listened to this podcast called the Jungian Life Podcast, and in one episode they explore the idea that the potential that Tolkien and Jung tapped into similar realms. Because I know Jung, and I haven't read the Red Book or anything like that, but they seem to imply that Jung really tapped into these archetypes that in some ways map perfectly onto Tolkien's world, but it has been fascinating for me to reflect on these characters I've created. And I think where it really struck me was the first time around, the first season, there's this character called Matt, who is kind of this introverted weapons nerd. And he ends up getting, spoiler alert, he ends up getting brutally killed right close to the season finale, kind of at the climax of the season. Mm-hmm. And up until that point, I hadn't killed any major characters, but this was the series had tens of thousands of regular viewers at this point, and so they were very invested in it, and it was so fascinating to see people respond emotionally, to this character being killed, this little Lego guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, there is a level of realness to these characters and to their existence, and obviously it's not at our level of lived realness. Maybe it's more of a thought form or something like that. But there is a sort of presence they occupy in this world, and I don't know what it is. I don't know the metaphysical nature of it exactly, but there's something there, I think.
Yeah, no, there definitely is. I like the idea of, and this is how I witness it in my mind's eye. So Carl Jung, with his collective unconscious and his archetypes, kind of stemming also from the great mythologist Joseph Campbell, right? In his time frame, and trying to understand these archetypes in story through time are like eternal forces that move through nature and the nature of our own being, and they take shape in some certain forms, which then those archetypes have their names, that go along with them, like the magician and the fool and the high priestess and all these, and a lot of them represented in what is the most beautiful thing about it is that the tarot, you get a lot of the main 22 archetypes in their own right of a collective unconscious, but it's done in imagery through those 22 pathways that the tarot matches itself onto, that major arcana on the Kabbalistic tree of life. So it's fascinating because what's happening is when you're being a creator of those worlds, you're discovering an internal force that then these vessels, these creatures and things that you've created can take shape based upon your eternal logos, right? Mm-hmm. So it would be your logos that is speaking creation into being, this higher God mind. Yeah. And the nous, the logos interacting with your own, nervous system. That's how I like, and I think that's brilliant because why I like it is because it's a pure level of embodiment of trying to understand situations and just be creative to create a universe like that, because it's you're not only doing it where you're slowing down time and you're seeing, so you have to map this thing out quite well, right? As you're seeing it happen. Is that what you're doing? Or do you already have the idea of the whole story as you move these pieces to make the story?
Yeah, well, the Gray Horizons movie was the first time that I had written an entire script as a movie. I had planned it. I had planned out the shot lists and everything, pre-recorded all the voice acting. So there, I really had planned it out pretty much to a T. And after that, it was just a matter of fleshing it out with actual stop motion animation and visual effects. But it's interesting what you're saying about like the logos and all that. One thing, it's, obviously a fascinating part of this is like I bring in voice actors to play these characters. And so while these characters, kind of get in or fleshed out, they fit these archetypal roles or they take them on, you could say, they also get brought to life by these people playing them. So it's like, our sub logos come together to animate this new reality in a kind of fascinating way.
Yeah, I mean, this is beautiful, right? Alan Moore talks about how art, is basically synonymous in its own right when done authentically, when you're tapped in, when you're creating from like an idea as it explodes outward. Art is magic, and so one of the most ultimate forms of magic is then creating a story in one right or the other, whether you write it down in a book or a graphic novel, or you make it into stop-go animation into movies and small episodes, which you have. How many episodes are out?
Gosh, so the first season had 10 episodes, and those ranged from 6 to 8 minutes. The second season, 9 episodes of the same length, similar length. And then there was the movie, which was 90 minutes. And there were various other animations in between there, but that's like the bulk of the Void War storyline. I mean, it's all canonical, you could say. It all follows a story that spans like, again, hundreds, thousands of years. But if we could go back, I'm curious, I'm a big fan of The Law of One, and I've been reading it lately, and it talks about, or Ra talks about the archetypes. Like the book 4 is all about the archetypes, the tarot, and it's fascinating because I might butcher it to some degree. It's very because it's very dense material, but it seems in some sense that this logos, out of which our world like kind of emanated, you could say, this system, the archetypes are a production of that. The archetypes are baked into that logos as a sort of, this is according to this framework, as a sort of templates that we can draw upon, that we can access in a sort of way that helps us progress through this, you could call it density, through this reality, through this journey. And so it's fascinating to me to consider, as a storyteller, the archetypes are tremendously valuable because they aid you in creating compelling characters that people will know. And it's interesting, too, to think about when you are a child and you see a wizard in a movie. Nobody has to explain to you what the wizard is or who the warrior is. I mean, I think it probably I don't know if an infant is able to perceive these archetypes in any kind of cognitive way, but man, that must be something that's baked into us deeply and that we are able to access at a very early age, I would suspect.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, archetypes, as Joseph Campbell brought it up, said the archetypes of the psyche are like instincts in an animal, like in their body. Yeah. It is something that just comes out of us in those times, and it can't help itself because it has such a powerful force that it's connected to. These eternal forces that move through all things that, so I agree with that. I do want to state that MagusintheMedia in no way condones the reading or listening to the raw materials. However, I respect our dear Christian and his what is tuning in and really, and connecting these things. That's all, bro. That's all Plato and early ancient philosophers, as well as mystics and mages and writers of great mythical and magical stories for such a long time. And so one of my things I dislike about the raw material is that it kind of it is I don't condone channeled material like that in that way. It makes me sketched out by people's own nonsense and nervous systems to say certain kinds of connections. But when you can read it, it's like it's almost like pointing the way to the actual source material. I'm going to tell you a story. And so it's fascinating enough where I completely agree. I read so much when in my younger years, and I was like trying to figure it out. And so as in normal storytelling, like the great stories like Tolkien, to your Dune is a big one, is a massive Star Wars. All these things, all these archetypes that come through these characters are how basically the building blocks of reality kind of coexist with itself. It's how we then, exactly as you were bringing up with the raw materials, how we make sense of the world so we can reach towards our wholeness, as Carl Jung talks about it, so we can reach that self as the ego kind of integrates with self to understand its place amongst the whole thing. And so that's true. The Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, as you climb from the 10th Sephirah all the way up the tree, the magician goes through every pathway and every sphere. And what's so brilliant about the major arcana, since it's another way in the tarot to represent this cosmic force moving through time, right? The Fool on his journey from the 0 card to the Magus, High Priestess, and onward all the way to the Universe, which is the last card. What that is signifying through the archetypes is yes, the archetypes of the collective, of the individualistic unconscious as he's traveling his journey through the tree, right? Because those then map on to every mark. There's 22 pathways of the tree of life that connects the 10 Sephirah, and the 22 pathways this is what happened. This is what the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn did, and Eliphas Levi before him, and before them, that group of individuals like Waite and Mathers. Eliphas Levi connected the tarot cards to the Hebrew alphabet. Fascinating. It's fucking fascinating. Yeah. And so you have these things going on, and what they're collecting from is, again, people like Cornelius Agrippa, who wrote the 3 books of occult philosophy, or Eliphas Levi after Agrippa, or in this time frame. Then you go back all the way through the many different Hellenized, Renaissance to the Hellenized worldview, and then all of a sudden you get this man called Plato, and he's now talking about the Platonic forms. And these Platonic forms, those all pure, perfect representation of the forms, all wrapped in then the good in its own right. Not wrapped as in a bubble, but wrapped as in they're all, as our soul transmigrates from one life to the next, it reaches a step higher and a higher if you do and live a virtuous life by this kind of code of ethics. In that Platonic, the Republic worldview, or in the Phaedrus is where you get the chariot with the horses as they climb their way up, and it's the representation of how the souls transmigrate. When it comes back down, sometimes it has more because it reached. So in your life, in this Platonic sense, as we speed run through Plato, is this we're climbing the chariot up into the forms, and you have a black horse and a white horse. The white horse is that virtuous, rational-minded self yours. The black horse is the lower desires and animalistic forms. They're in your life, and then when you die and you start to reincarnate, they climb up. And so hopefully the one pulls you farther up, because then when you are reborn, you are reborn as a philosopher king.
Yeah.
Right. And so this fucking this is an allegory, right? This is a myth. This is something that teaches us how to do philosophy, but in the same right, the forms are Plato's, is his episteme. This is epistemology. It's his theory of knowledge and how he proves what things are real or not. So, based upon the forms being the perfect thing, and then everything in this world is called mimesis, or a representation of these perfect forms.
Yeah.
What, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a funny way to end that. I know some percentage of what you're saying. I remember being so puzzled by the learning about the forms, and I remember the way it was explained to me to try to make sense of it was, well, imagine a chair. Imagine there's some form of a chair that exists, so that when you see a chair, you know it's a chair. And this is and I was like, well, where does that form exist? Is it up on a shelf, in the Akashic records or something? And you can we all draw from it in some way. Where is it? What is it? And I don't really have an answer to that. But there seems to be something, these templates that exist in mind, and maybe in the greater mind, you could say, where we recognize things, we tap into things. And it's really fascinating to me, because I remember when I first discovered Joseph Campbell and the Hero's Journey. And I got hooked, and in a deep way. I was like, hold on a second. So you have the Fool.
I was like, holy shit.
Oh, yeah, well, the thing that boggled my mind was that I started to see the hero's journey everywhere I looked. There was nowhere I could look and not see it, because you have like stuff like, you know, the call to adventure, and you could like, I could find calls to adventure everywhere I looked. You know, when you wake up in the morning and you hear a bird sing, it's calling you to the day. When you get an invitation to a party that you're not so sure about, you know, it's the call to adventure. But also you find the refusal to call. I don't feel like getting out of bed. I don't really like that party or those people or whatever it might be. I mean, all these stages of the hero's journey, all the way to the, you know, the valley of despair, the atonement of the father. You could just see like little versions of them in everything. And I think when I like started to grapple with that, with the narrative nature of reality, that was a real like awakening for me. I was like, this whole thing is story driven. Like everything meaningful to us seems to be story driven. Our dreams at night are story driven. And I think story is almost, I would say story and narrative is like more foundational than matter to some degree. It's like so key to our identity and our experience.
Yeah, no, completely. You know, you just nailed it. You nailed it. Ding, ding, ding. If there was a bell, if I had one of those things, I would be like, okay, nailed it. And this is why. Well, the idea is also written down in many things, but one of the best books to read is called The Secret History of All Things. It's called The Secret History. No, not of all things. Just The Secret History by Mark Booth. Brilliant man, brilliant author, brilliant writer. I'm going to be interviewing at the end of June for his new book that's coming out, The Secret History of the Universe. Instead of The Secret History of like here, or he's got one that's called the Secret History of the Sacred History or something like that. Anyway, I'm reading all three. They're fantastic. Thank you, Mark Booth, for everything you do. But the main point of that is that there's a switch here, and it goes from, it's basically kind of what they call a Copernican turn in its own right, and there's a Kantian term, or how Copernicus, we all saw a thing one way, and then Copernicus was like, whoa, look at this thing, and then we're like, oh, and then as we switched and the way we saw it. But the idea is that instead of there being first created matter, and then from matter, the idea came, all things, it was that first there was an idea, and then from that idea, everything came to be, and then everything, matter was able to be created. And that's just that slight little switch in our worldview. So we can start to understand the world has a lot more malleability to it. And not only malleability, but if you have the ability to hone your focus and train your will and your mind, you can tap into things by like creating whole universes like you've done. Or like the big ones, the big masters of universe creation, the great demiurges themselves being like Tolkien, as you brought up already. Like Tolkien created a whole language for every single, like like Elven language, Orc, it's a level of dedication that it seems like only comes around so often. Right? That's not your normal everyday. Frank Herbert was brilliant as well, but he's not creating whole languages that are grammatically correct and structurally framed in like the most beautiful of ways. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, it really does seem like Tolkien lived in service to Middle Earth, and I mean he made it his life, and it sure unfolded nicely because now Tolkien lives rent free in all of our minds. Like it exists as a metaphysical. Is a mythological structure that we all draw upon. Like when we think of a wizard, when we think of a dwarf, like so many of us, we go to Gimli, Gandalf. We picture the One Ring to rule them all. They're so. I mean, he was tapped in, and he locked it into our realm in a cool way. It's really striking. Yeah, it's pretty fucking amazing. Nice. What kind of things do you think really? What stories are your favorite stories that helped you create this universe? I have stated before, I draw big inspiration from The Thing. In the movie, John Carpenter's The Thing, you have these workers who are working out in the Arctic, and they encounter this being that is completely amorphous. It eats everything, it consumes things, it imitates things. It has no inherent shape that we know of. It just takes the shapes of whatever it consumes and comes in contact with. And that, again, blew my mind when I saw it for the first time. I was like, this is the best horror movie that could possibly exist. You have this thing that it's freakish, it's completely alien, and it can't even,
you can't even say it's malicious. It's the real terror of it comes from its desire to live and reproduce in its own way. And so, the slag in my universe is very similar in that sense. Movies like Annihilation are huge for me. I loved Annihilation. It's a very similar...
never saw that one. Nice.
Oh, dude, it's so good. You've got this force or entity that just, again, it doesn't seem good or bad, but it does seem good or bad in relation to us, but it's operating on a different scale. But there's some comedy too. I love Starship Troopers, of course, Star Wars, like a lot of the great sci-fis I've drawn inspiration from.
Nice.
So there's a lot of that stuff.
Battlestar Galactica.
I actually have never seen.
It's wild, bro. You need to get on the Battlestar Galactica. There's a lot of not really good, there's some things, acting and things like that. But if we want to get into AI and fucking cyborg robot AI, sentient AI robot, see, this person knows. Yeah. Yeah, nice. She knows, and so obviously you guys should meet, and so it's one of those things. It's so brilliant. So that's a fascinating thing. So how I think to go back to how you create these things with the stop-go animation, it's a very intimate kind of way of creating, and it's something fascinating enough that hasn't been. I feel like we're getting so far away from building sets. And how beautiful that is. We just, Kaiva and I just watched Dark City.
Oh, so good.
Such a good fucking movie. And it's fascinating is that's you could tell that those, and even if they're not completely, those are sets that were built up in 1999. That movie came out right around the same time as The Matrix. Both epitomize this theory about this demiurgic integration into this whole phenomena where you have these, in Dark City, you have the slug-like electro fucking parasitic beings who have taken over the dead. That's what you learn in Dark City. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen fucking Dark City yet, and I don't blame you. That was the first time I actually watched it. And this is kind of what I do, is these types of how to break free from the Matrix kind of ideals. And for some reason, the Dark City, I'd heard about it for so long. And anyway, so you get a man out of time, as in he didn't fall asleep when they were all falling asleep. And so he comes to realize that then he starts having these similar powers to whatever the demiurgic being parasite, white fucking people, all the pale people, as they created this whole simulation of a city to test these humans because they wanted to see what made them human, because they wanted to be human, right? That's the story. This guy doesn't then fall asleep, realizes that they've been matching their memories for a long time to figure out what makes humans human, and then so this guy starts having, since he awoke, has similar powers. The tuning, I think, is what it was called.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That these parasitic beings who have killed their own thing and they're looking for bodies and trying to survive. Nonsense. Are trying to find it through just memories. And as we know, memories are one thing, but not the whole thing, especially when you have theories like Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenic resonance theory, where memories aren't just stored and they can be interchanged through time, but they're actually fields of energy around us. Fascinating enough. Very interesting to the archetype talk.
And if you want to think of DNA as some kind of antenna, it seems like the morphic field that you tune into things with similar DNA. So it's that's great. That's cool, Ari. I didn't know you have seen Dark City. It is a wild movie. I saw it at a time, or I rewatched it, I should say, at a time when I was getting really into reptilian theory and the idea that we probably live in a prison planet. And so
David Icke. He's talking about David Icke.
I am talking about David Icke.
Yeah, of course. So we're at Raw Materials and David Icke. This is the kind of stream this is going to be.
Yeah, I've seen it or read it, watched it all.
I want everybody to know that there's an age difference between Christian and I, even though he's been doing YouTube and fucking creating these things since for how old? It's 12. And you've said you were 12?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And now you're how old are you?
I'm 30.
Yeah. See, you're 30. Okay. So that makes me even older because I was going to diss you for being still in your 20s. I knew he's 30. Him and I hang out. He's my friend. But time is but an illusion, but it's fascinating. we all wake up at different patterns. And so I remember reading David Icke back in the day, and he's still hitting. But it's this reptilian thing that I have a little problem with, because I almost believe that we can be like dissuaded into understanding the actual madness of what a real civilization might look like that is controlling and like empowering a system, and forgetting the map for the territory. As in, like, it's easy to sell and market the idea that there are actually reptilians, space alien lords, and that type of thing that come down on the planet. I'm not saying this is what you believe. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is not what he believes. This is a David Icke mythos, and so, and then that they're like ruling things, and that connects with this Zecharia Sitchin. These reptilian beings maybe like searching for gold because they need to like re-inhabit their atmosphere because they blew up Mars, and somehow Elon Musk's trying to take us back to Mars, but he doesn't realize that we're not Total Recall, and so you're probably going to have to do it. If you are Total Recall, you're going to have to implant memories into us, but we realize that it's not memories that make the human, and so. Fascinating. We get into a fascinating topic because we're talking about Dark City, how this brilliant man creates his vast empire of void wars, and at the same time knowing that what he's doing is he's tapping into when he's creating these things. Because I want to hit on this, and I've been trying like bringing it back here and there. But stop go animation means that he is setting everything up, filming something, and then breaking it all, and then moving them piece by piece. So the demiurge of his world doesn't run on a 24-hour clock time frame like our sun, as we like think that's what's going on as the planet rotates around the sun and the planet does its thing around and so my point is that since he's slowing down time, he's got to hold all this into measurement at that same time. Just like for some reason we're talking about Dark City. This is that collective archetypal mind that can tap into and discover where these stories are coming from and why they're so fascinating. Is in this world, we have a Time Lord lording over time and then creating things with his characters. And then we understand also things like Dark City, which are giving up this archetypes as the Joseph Campbell theory comes on it. And we got mythologies that are being represented, because Dark City is but a mythology of the Gnostic understanding of our reality, as you already brought up, a black iron prison. You know what I mean? And so it's almost like you are a prisoner. You are the prison lord. So what we found out here is that Christian is a tyrant demiurge who's killing his characters all the time in these badass films.
What they don't know is that it's for their own spiritual progression. I wish I could tell them.
Genius. No, that's true.
Except for the ones I kill off because it's important for the plot. I'd be tough to break it to them.
But that's Aristotle's accidents. And so even in Aristotelian metaphysics, and it's in his physics, he does adhere towards how, because in Aristotle's philosophy of the prime mover, who doesn't move, somehow has this like eternal urge, and then movement is created, right? It's like these ancient thinkers trying to have concepts that we still use today. That's then mythologized about how like Eros works with this divine passion and a movement into the world. And, or also stemming from, that is the backbone, because Aristotle is he's a Platonic thinker because he is the student of Plato, who is then going back to the demiurge thing, that the demiurge in the Gnostic view is a tyrant.
Yeah.
Not all Gnostics, but most that believe then that the material world is evil and that it has entrapped light into materiality.
Yeah. Do you buy that?
Do I buy that?
Yeah. Like, what do you do with this idea that there's something, that there are dark forces like keeping us trapped? Like, because that's one of the biggest questions I've grappled with in this whole, like, my whole exploration of like what this whole thing is this a school? Is it a prison? And to what degree is it either? And I mean, to boil it down really quickly, at this point, I think it's, it is an exquisitely designed system, and we inhabit one tiny portion of the greater system, but it is an exquisitely designed system through which we progress for a purpose. Maybe that's the simplest way to put it. And there are, like, you could call them dark actors or bad guys, but within the greater scheme of the system, they are just playing their role. So that's and it's hard. It's a hard thing to hold, because at the same time, I think that like we need justice in the world. We need like criminals and pedophiles to be like taken down and removed. But I don't. But I'm like, well, yeah, they're playing their role, I guess. But it's a weird thing. But I'm curious to hear your take on all that.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Lots of thoughts, because it's such a fascinating topic, because that is the topic.
Yeah.
Right? I think that is the topic of what is it? What is this? Why does it matter? Right? What is this? Why does it matter? And what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
You know, and when you can wrap things down to those three things, we then go back to, which is why I find it so important that we go back to the thinkers through the ages, because it is, if our worldview first starts with the idea, then we can understand that it was the idea and its framework for how it experiences the phenomenal world, right? And in doing so, we get down to asking different questions. And what I mean by that is like,
yeah.
So the idea, what I mean by that is that when we ask the question, is this a prison planet? Is this, materiality good or bad? Is this also a school? Is this a system of exploration of consciousness? Is this just a place for our material desires to roll out? Is this nothing at all? In both extent, as in, is it nothing at all to the way that it's just a dream? Or is this nothing at all in the material sense where when I die, it doesn't matter anyway? And so what is so fascinating about all those is those are frameworks for how we experience reality. They're perceptions in and of themselves. And so if we can get to understanding, and this is really important, what happens with like somebody like Heidegger, when he says all of these questions we must put, it's our judgments against the world, must bracket off and put to the side. At first, so a German idealist, Husserl, comes up with phenomenology in his own right, because he wants to know like what is going on. And we find out that in our Cartesian thinking, we always want to think, what is this? This is that. We always want to break it down in the verb, object, predicate, and how we experience things, which is obviously what we're trying to figure out at all times. But when we get to Alfred Korzynski or the Heideggerian way of seeing the world, we bracket off our normal everyday experience, and then we actually get to talk about what we actually are experiencing, which is and Husserl states this, is that our consciousness, whatever this is we're always somehow, because we're already here, we're experiencing something, so something's happening. And so it is since we're thrown into the world, we have intentionality tending towards something. But that tending towards also means that I have a perception of something. And that something is now perceived by the intending thing perceiving something. And why that's so important? Why is that so important? That's so important because once I understand that, all of those levels or models of experiencing something are perceptions in and of themselves and not the thing itself. And so anytime I ask the question, what is reality? And I answer back with, reality is a black iron prison. Reality is just pure materiality, and it doesn't matter because when you die, your consciousness dissipates. Or reality is is a school for us to ascend towards. Ad infinitum are all just that. They're models and not the territory itself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And in some ways, you're reminding me of the Ouroboros worm. It's a snake eating its own tail. Like you think you've like tacked something down, and then you're just like you lose it as soon as you hold it. And you are both the perceive. This is something that blew my mind, and something that what you said made me think of. I remember my favorite classes in college were philosophy classes, and I was a biology major, but I was lucky enough to have at least three philosophy classes. They were just a blast.
Nice.
And in one of them, I can't remember the exact discussion, but I remember we talked about like perceiving an apple. And like when you perceive an apple, let's say on a table, you're looking at this apple. Where is the apple? And of course, conventional wisdom, let's say, well, obviously the apple is sitting there on the table. But when you really dig into it, it's like, well, no, the thing that you're perceiving is in your mind. You are perceiving a red shape that is being interpreted by your brain. We could call it a red shape. We call that experience of seeing that type of thing red, apple, round, whatever. But what it is it's information, and there's a decoding process. And I don't know. It's tough to like really cleanly map this out. Maybe you'll do a better work. I suspect you know where I'm going with this.
I mean, maybe I can never truly know what you're talking about, Christian, because I'm not you. Yeah. But what I like to get at is we're still falling for the map and the territory, because if we're talking about it as information, we have to understand that information itself is but a metaphor for something which we're trying to describe as an actual experience. And so that is the trick that I think right there, and I agree with you. But the problem is, it's maybe. I agree with you that we can describe it as information, but at the same time, it's like when I touch information, this isn't what information feels like, is it? This is what a cup feels like. And so it's fascinating enough, like when you're, when you're creating intimately, it's more than just information from your script onto the battlefield or how your landscape, your terrain. You know what I mean? And so what I'm catching on to that is what I'm saying is how important it is to try to not fall for any descriptions on the universe as we refine understanding of even how to ask the question, what is the universe and what does it mean? Because it's more like what I think is fascinating is tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., David Beth interview of the Great Theon Press. This book is something you are going to have to read it. I am telling everybody to read it. It's called The Black Pilgrimage. And basically it's like fascinating enough. It's like what's wrong with modern day occultism is something we really get at too in its levels of abstraction, is that all of these ways that we're experiencing not only our worldviews in a politics for sure, but when we're talking about spirituality, religion, occult, esoteric too, even trying to describe things, we are so far up in our heads that we forget that our heads are, this idea of whatever red means of an apple is in our head, but it has to be out there because I'm describing something. And so then all of a sudden I get caught up in this Cartesian dualism where I'm now describing the being of the red apple. And the real illusion is, what is all of this? I don't care about the apple anymore. And so that's what Heidegger talks about when he uses terms like Dasein, being in the world. Because once I can understand that for 1,000 years now, since 1600s, we were talking with the Cartesian Enlightenment, we've been talking about fucking beings. And all of a sudden philosophy becomes analytic philosophy, and it doesn't actually invoke eros and the passion of how to create fucking universes. Because when you're creating Void Wars, that's an intimate interaction with your pieces that are no longer pieces, but now are people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fascinating to think back on by far my most viewed piece of media or story that I've created is the first season, the Lego Zombie Apocalypse full movie. And I've wondered, like, what is it about that was so successsull? And why haven't they been able to recapture that? Was it luck, lightning in a bottle, right place, right time? And I think to some degree, we are in an ever-changing media landscape, and Lego stop motion doesn't do as well as it once did in a different era of YouTube.
Which is why you've created a comic book as well.
Yeah, which is why I'm just never going to stop. And that's the thing. Like, it's in this age of AI, to kind of bring it back to like the AI. You mentioned that earlier.
Just wait. I need you to hold on to that. I have this impulse. Thank you, everybody who's tuning in for this fine evening. Just to update you all, this is Christian. He's created Twisted Bricks, a whole universe where he takes Legos and clay that he creates and these plaster molds, right? Creatures and characters, and then Go animates them, creates the whole terrain. This isn't just small dimes. He's then put this into he's got episodes. You can go over to Twisted Bricks, and please, he is a local yet a local celebrity, right? Through his creation of this fantastic universe, which you can go over to Twisted Bricks, check it out after the show, and support him because it's brilliant. He created then a movie from these episodes. Where there was a movie before or after the episodes?
After. So there were 2 seasons of kind of an episodic thing, and then there was a feature-length film after that.
Yeah, so Christian, the fucking Demiurge himself, the director, who obviously has a heart, so he's not a complete tyrant, but he's working on himself.
I'm a good Demiurge.
He's a good Demiurge. That's what Yaldi Baldi said to the rest of his world. So like, hey Hebrews, I'm a good Demiurge. Oh, fascinating. And so he put out a movie. It went up in the local theater, and not just any theater, the local downtown theater that has all the cool. It's the old school theater, all the cult classics and all the things. Get to present this. We played earlier in the stream in this wonderful show. We played his trailer for it, and it's so interactive, and it is a space opera, and it is brilliant. And so this is Christian. For all of you who are just joining us, go back to, and it's fascinating. So we've been zooming all over the place trying to understand art, myth, magic, and creating a universe, because fascinating enough, just so everybody knows, if you're reading such things as the fucking lesser key of Solomon, the greater key of Solomon, and trying to understand the ancient Freemasonic secrets of Hiram Abiff as they're trying to talk about the destruction of the fucking temple that Solomon created from his, after his father, he was like, I've figured some shit out, right? I'm passing along the line of David all the way back to Abraham, who actually stems from a stellar fucking cult that most people don't want to actually talk about. And then he kind of went off on his own. Or did he get kicked out? And in time, we get through these mythologies, we get such an intermix of occult and esoteric knowledge. It's fascinating. And you say, how do we get all the way back to biblical times talking about the Demiurge? Well, it goes back to the great Yaldi Baldi that the Gnostics think is actually Jehovah or Yahweh, which is all these little gods for these cults and all these different tribes in that time frame. And so the idea is, what is a tyrant god, and what is somebody who has actually worked on himself to know that I can create and use art, and the stories actually tell themselves. And so if the stories are telling themselves, they're actually discovering a pattern that individuals must go through time, but it has to be organic. So from this third dimensional realm, from all the thought realms, as we climb up the tree, we get the great Adam Kadmon himself, named Christian, creating Twisted Bricks and creating worlds on Malkuth, the kingdom. You follow?
You lost me on some of that, the Solomon stuff.
And why I bring that up, that's a great question. Thank you. And the Solomon stuff is there because of once we understand that you are to be your own master builder. Because Solomon became one of the greatest magicians of all time. And so the idea in Freemasonry, which everyone always wants to lose the map for the territory, is that they forget that these are embodied internal, external experiences that we are having as we're trying to understand our own death and contemplate existence itself. And upon doing so, some of us tap into and discover worlds. And you've discovered a world, and it's fantastic. And so, yeah, and because I think these things change through time. And so the idea is it's art, and art being magic. And that goes back to the idea of becoming your own Demiurge, and why I named the stream this way. Because Christian, you built it brick by brick. That's fascinating. That's craftsmanship. That's fucking Masonic masonry.
I'm a Freemason by trade.
He's not. But the idea is that in Freemasonry, even if you're, the idea is just making good men better, right? So the idea being that there's an esoteric level of how you experience these stories, that myth is much more than just lies and fiction, but fiction, when tapped into the right kind of archetypes, have the ability to tell an authentic story that then you can go through, and it kind of changes you as a person. And then that could be that tale of that master builder. That's kind of what I was getting at with the Solomonic references.
Yeah, and just to tie into that, this whole living in the age of AI, where you can generate 4K video that's convincing, or heavily stylized anime, or even Lego stop motion. I think the art of art is going to change, and we really will live in a day in a time where I mean, I don't know if it's what the competitiveness of it is going to be. I don't know how creatives are going to make a living going forward, what that's going to look like. But one thing that seems apparent to me is that people who want to create art, people who want to tell stories, they will do so of their own desire, from an internal aspect, from what it gives you to make the story and to tell the story, not from the external results or from the views you get from it. And that's going to be interesting to see.
It feels like it's changing already.
Oh, big time.
I mean, let alone with YouTube cracking down on AI art, AI all driven like YouTube channels are getting shut down right now. Humans themselves are wanting to. I feel like whenever I see something actually creative and authentic, instead of like you see the scripts so much of things,
Yeah, and I do have hope, because I do see like a resistance, like a desire for people to consume human-made art.
Yeah.
And like if you have watched something and you find out it's AI, there's a sort of like, like, well, that's kind of heartless.
Yeah.
When I started,
it's a cold Demiurge. That's a cold tyrant.
Yeah, that's the real Demiurge. But I remember when I started making the Void War, and that poster right there is from the Void War. The one right above me is for the first season of the Lego Zombie Apocalypse. The Void War one should really be bigger. But
and you got that what's that right there in the middle?
Oh yeah, that's a silver play button.
See, what I'm telling you is Christian ain't no slum. This motherfucker got a silver play button.
Yeah.
That a boy.
But when I started making the Void War, Gray Horizons, I remember thinking, okay, the Lego group might come after me here. They might say, yeah, you can't make any money with this movie. The minifigure is a trademarked piece of whatever.
Crazy.
Plastic. And so I was like, well, let's just see what happens. And so I made the movie. I was very clear that I am not affiliated with Lego and all the marketing and everything. Nobody's reached out to me. The movie's on Amazon Prime. I've made like $300 from it there. So, no, I haven't been stopped yet. But with this, like, continuing to do it, now there's this question. I think many artists are going to have to ask this, like, A, am I willing to make it even if I don't make money off of it? B, am I willing to make it even if it's drowned out in oceans of AI slop? And that's a hard question, but I do think it's going to separate the wheat from the chaff. Like, people who are truly committed to their crafts will never stop practicing their craft. And so it'll be just very interesting to see. I don't think any of us can predict how it's really going to look, but I'm sure curious to see it unfold.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm excited because I'm participating.
Yeah.
And it's much more fun to participate amongst the chaos than it is to be a bystander. And so it's like one of those things where I'm all like, there are things like Gary Vee, who's in his own right, obviously a sophist, but the idea is that he is saying true things. And so even sophists can say, charlatans, can say true things. And, it's like, I get it. He's got that pull your boots up strap by the blindfold, pull the boots up strap by the blindfold and you get her done. That's basically what he's saying. Just go to garage sales, buy a bunch of things, sell it on eBay, put it on TikTok. And it's like, you actually like, I think most people have a problem with just going to garage sales first off, just getting to one. And then from there, once you're there, like you have to not look like a crazy person, like taking photos of everything and see. I know there's like a lineup, and that's not even my point. My point is, and then once you buy things, which most people love doing, then you have to give them up. So I just realized that actually it could be a form of Buddhism to actually get into garage, what is it called? Garage shopping?
Yeah, I don't even know. But I will say I was just watching this video about like hustle culture, and they talk about and all this, and I'm like, and I got in that. I got in the whole manosphere, and I was like going down all these rabbit holes of like, who are we supposed to be as men in the world? Like, we're supposed to be providers of wealth and security. That's where our value comes from. It's men, and I did all of that, and really like I feel myself changing in significant ways where I'm like, man, we've been bamboozled, we've been psyoped, like this idea that you are defined by your productivity, that we are kind of cavemen who need to, like, the only like right you have to have a mate is if you also own a Lamborghini.
Obviously.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, it's common sense, really. But we are so much more than just I don't know, hustlers. Like
oh yeah, no, I completely agree.
In a lot of these channels, like Gary Vee, for example, their whole brand is one thing. Who's the other guy with the nose strip? Not
Huberman, even though he's his own level. He's but he's not as bad. No, I know what you're talking about. That guy. Yeah, Hormozy.
Yeah, and I want to say a lot of these guys provide a lot of great value. I've enjoyed watching their content at various points, but there is a richness to life and to who you can be and what you can do that I think they miss. And I don't know. It's easy to get sucked up into this idea that you're supposed to be a certain type of you. But really, you are the only one who can figure out who that is. And sometimes it takes going down rabbit holes to figure that out, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said about that. It's a fascinating topic. We
be hustlers too, though. Ain't that the truth?
Well, we got to be hustler. You got to be a gangster. You know what I mean? And I mean that in the way where it's very Shaolin. And what I mean by that is it's more Wu-Tang. And so each member of Wu-Tang, side note, is got a name from a Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movie, or a character from one of them. Interesting enough. Why? Because the Shaw Brothers created and like basically owned the Chinese Hollywood and Hong Kong at that time frame where they're in the 60s and 70s where they're creating the Shaw Brothers movies. Fast forward. Is that it's important to understand, and that's why I'm going to pull up this guy. I interviewed him. I'm interviewing him on Saturday. His name is Angel Miller. And so the idea is that not to be bamboozled by any, and because I think when it comes to socio-political things like that, like people trying to understand themselves in the world, a lot of these movements are cyclical cycles of reaction, problem, action, solution, or like a reaction response. You know what I mean? Something happens because something else happens, and social culture moves through these cycles, and there's like extremism that happens through that. Thus, the manosphere. And and then thus you get certain different waves of feminism. Thus you get Marxist explosions. Thus you get the response of some kinds of fascism. Thus you get this response of, but always being those types of social political things are being run by the evil tyrant demiurges, the socio-political oligarchical parasitic class who are pumping our air full of chemicals, our water full of chemicals, and pushing messages across the screen to confuse individuals. And in that confusion, again, we get problem, action, solution, and we get these different levels of the social structures, interaction between people. Because what do people do when you don't know what the fuck is going on? Which is why these questions of what is reality and what is our place in it are so important. Mm-hmm. Why through certain things that you're doing with being your own little creator, right? Not little, big creator. This man's got a fucking silver plaque behind him, over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. He's crushing. And so the idea is that we are trying to find our place in the world because you're trying to, and again, it goes back to this whole idea of building universes brick by brick, is to become the master of your own temple, right? You're in where you create is your temple. That's exactly what a magician and mystic is doing when they create their astral temple. They have their place of worship. They have the outward temple, so you have a safe space to sit. And upon doing that sitting and or standing, depending upon your magic and mysticism, you then do magic. You perform mysticism. And when you get, and that looks like a lot of struggle, a lot of heartache, a lot of anxiety, a lot of despair at the same, because of your transforming as you go, as the art happens. And you're trying to refine an art externally. And in doing so, you're refining yourself internally, which is why we can never get away from this interaction between things. It's not dualism, because dualism, never the twain shall meet, but this yin and yang synthesis of body mind that's why Heidegger had to create a whole word for it called Dasein, which doesn't really translate, and if it did, it's being in the world. It's just the way we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what you're talking about, this like refining process too, the going through the struggles of life, just to tie it into a sort of narrative framework, I just see it in a way as like we are going through the hero's journey just over and over and over again, like an endless washing machine, where it's like endless calls to adventure, endless fun and games. You know, there's a fun and games portion of the hero's journey, meeting the ally, the false ally. Like it's just constant, and it does feel like this refining mechanism. But it is interesting because I wonder, it doesn't seem like it operates as a refining mechanism for everyone, but maybe that's how it's like should operate.
Well, but that's the problem with with understanding of morality.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing that we always got to talk about is like, what are moral structures? And because the famous Tool lyric, right? The universe is hostile, so impersonal, devoured to survive. So it was, so it always is.
Yeah.
That's a Joseph Campbell line. That's the understanding of how the universe works. That life feeds on life. Another Tool lyric. Life feeds on life. And we understand that is what you talked about when you said the snake is eating its own tail.
Yeah.
Is that the reason it's not two snakes eating each other's tail is because that goes back to the dualism of things. Mm-hmm. But if we understand that singular, like it's not even monism, but that's another way of talking about it, because that can be a subjective understanding of how we're trying to place these pieces on the board in a way that is intimate and interactive. The creation and dying process is a snake eating its own tail, because the only way to talk about it then is through stories.
Yeah.
Because
on the subject of stories, I ponder the Jesus in the Bible a lot, and I don't know if I'd call myself a Christian, but obviously the story is deeply embedded in human thought and in our collective, both unconscious and conscious, I would say. But one thing that I think Christian imagery does well is the idea of God come down and experiencing itself, being crucified on the cross. Of course, and where I differ from this, is the idea that Jesus was God in a way that we are not. That he and then he was sacrificed for our sins and all that. But just that image of the creator allowing itself to be destroyed by its own creation, I think is a provocative and inspiring image. And I think that's one of the reasons why it persists so powerfully.
No, you're completely right. And it has to do with everything, right? Like in the Titans, the Olympians, now then all of a sudden you have the humans, and the story forever goes on, right? Uranus, wanting to kill his own father, Kronos killing his own father, Zeus killing his own father. Yeah.
Yeah. And, all this, you keep mentioning the Demiurge, and there is, you said the big question is what is this thing? Why are we here? What is the purpose? And all that. But to me, a sub question is who are the players? Or maybe you mentioned that, but there's this sense I have. I mean, it's hardly original, but there are many types of beings in the cosmos, and we are one type of being. Yeah. And then you have beings of simpler intelligence, animals, ants, plants, even. Yeah. But then you're going to have beings of higher intelligence, and you can think of it in terms of vibration or frequency or evolution. But I believe there are beings that have some degree of observance or maybe even care or stewardship over us. And the crazy question that we are left to ponder is, are the beings of higher intelligence benevolent or malevolent? And to what degree is always the question. Because it could very well be, even I have to kind of struggle with this idea that, we could be in a sort of factory farm. This could be a consciousness factory farm that is exquisitely designed so that we don't realize it. That is super dark, and I don't believe that is the case, and I choose not to believe that is the case. But when you really ponder these things, you do have to go into some kind of trenches with what this whole thing could be, I think, and what the other players in the game could be.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're spewing at me Giorgiani right now, and it's and what's fascinating is it's It's like I think okay, so Kaiva and I did our stream on Monday night. We did our show on Monday night, and I had an epiphany in my own right, because me and Giorgiani, even though he doesn't know it, feel some kind of way. And even though I know a lot of the things that he's saying are brilliant and true, there are a certain way he goes about doing it and he's kind of got some things. Anyway, I'm going to interview him. He's going to come on here. He doesn't know it yet.
What's his name?
His name is Jason Giorgiani. Okay, so you don't know. So it's fine. You can, yeah.
No, I think I know who he is.
Yeah, he's got books on Promethea, Lucifer, and all these things. But the reason is I bring him up is because of you bring up the idea of the harvesting factory of the planet, of the Earth. And it's like, I get why it seems so dire, but that's a very black pill way of thinking about how reality is. The factory farm, because it is like that. It's a loosh farm, right? That's but when we say that, it is like that. It's like, no, that's one way we experience reality, because when I'm outside in nature and feeling the warm sun on my body, and I don't, and I can for once just kind of let things go once I reach that kind of position of like, okay, like for this moment, I can enjoy myself.
Yeah, you're in paradise.
You're in paradise in your own right? That because we keep our own mental prisons, and that's the problem with certain philosophies, is that we can get so locked into despair that it formulates into levels of nihilism or solipsism, which both are dangerous, right? The belief that I don't believe in anything because nothing matters. This level of nihilism created from a false interpretation of Nietzsche, even though Nietzsche talked about nihilism. But then these things are reactions to themselves, and you get people interpreting things they think they've read, never read, and only been one line, and we get it interpreted incorrectly about the dissolution of understanding of meaning.
Yeah.
Of moral structures. That's what I'm getting at here, is that once you have that dissipation, it's looking at the world through a certain lens and not understanding the mystical experience of divine union with something that we all chase after from whatever experience in our youth as we are kids, as you brought up at the very beginning of the show, that I once played with, my Ninja Turtles action figures, my Batman action figures, and then used all the different, I grew up on the farm, used all the different farm, barn, toys, wooden stuff all around, these landscape things, these barns and sheds. And then, especially then when my sister came around, I still played with toys for a while. And then it was one of those things that she had Barbie. And so I didn't play with the Barbies. But the idea is that with my action figures, that I created worlds. Little did I know that would be something that I really loved, as in comic books, manga, mythology, and folklore. And to understand that when you can create worlds like that with using your imagination, which is the thing that taps us into from the kingdom, this 10th Sephirah in the model of Kabbalah, of the tree of life, Hermetic mysticism, and then back on, we are traveling from the 10th sphere through the imagination, which is the 32nd path, which is the world card in the major arcana, into Yasad, the 9th Sephirah, which is the moon, interesting enough, into the imagination. You're using into the phantasmagoria is a term that it was used, the immateria, into the other realms of existences. And as you pass through the planets, all the way up and through the firmamental abyss, and then you get then what you get is the solar system, and then from there it merges all into Kether, the single point of all expanding everything that is so warm because it's divine union. And then some people get stuck at that map. And so what I'm laying out is that tree of life on how art, which is the art of life, creates from the single point of an idea of consciousness exploding outward, which is then how we can get a better worldview, a worldview that actually suits us, so that we can take the path of experiencing the phenomenal world with beauty, wisdom, and strength. Then we can not have that. We can use that worldview of that black iron prison and the loosh farm, and we can use it to our betterment and add that if this is but a game, then I'm going to become the player of that game. And that then leads us to stories like, which I don't think you've ever seen, but it's called Solo Leveling. I've told you about it. You should watch it.
Yeah.
And so all you anime manga nerds, in Solo Leveling, there is a Demiurge, and you don't know who it is. But there's just the normal world everyone lives in. And what ends up happening one day is a bunch of portals pop up. And all these portals pop up, and then certain people on this planet, in this world, they get superpowers, and they get ranked from a level E, which is the weakest of all hunters, they call them, all the way to super, or S rank is what they call it. And then there's like, there's above S rank, which is national level hunter. And then there's above national, which is like fucking godlike or whatever. Barely anything like that. But what happens is one of the weakest of all hunters, you get to see him become a player in the game, because in the first episode, he dies at the end, but he sacrifices himself for everyone else, even though he was the weakest, because everyone got trapped in one of these portals, which are basically like in video game land. You go in them, you beat all the bad guys, collect all the lore, and you come back. Well, they got trapped in there. This is a Gnostic myth. This is why this is important, because of the Demiurge and levels of Gnosticism and storytelling. And that in this story, that character then got to choose, because for some reason, these higher level beings were able to intercede and create some kind of game system where no one can level up but this one player, and no one could see it, but he had little screens that were above him. And when he was in, he said, do you accept to become the player? And when he does so, he has the ability to level up and walk through the world, leveling up more than everybody else. And he just does. And the thing is what's he doing it for? Well, his mom is dying because she got the sickness because she's around magic people. She can't actually take the magic that's in the world now. And so her body like started dying. And she's in a coma where she doesn't, it's called the sleepless sleep. It's like the never ending sleep. And so he's trying to figure out how to get his mother back. And he does figure that out. But there's these things, right? So that's the anima, but these things get abstractized. And what we need to understand is that these things could come to us truly in the world if we saw them from a way that they're just as real as everything else, which you described with your fucking universe that you've created, that it's alive.
And that's where storytelling becomes some real magic, because you have a very gifted way of talking about things as if they are both literal and metaphorical. But I think that because many of these things are literal and metaphorical, and there is some kind of way in which they are both that is difficult to grasp. It's not, or it's difficult to grasp or you explain in simple terms. But like when you talk about the Kabbalah, the tree of life, the path through the tarot, through the archetypes, when I hear you talk about it, I hear it as both metaphor and literal reality. Would you say that there's truth in that?
Yes, I don't think it can be any other way, actually, because we can only speak about actual reality through metaphor.
Yeah.
And so if we're always talking about metaphor, and then we got to realize if our worldview now changes into a way of seeing reality as continually discovering and remembering something, like Plato, his understandings of knowledge, his theories of knowledge of the forms is like you're just continually remembering things, and because of in their mythologies, which were integrated with their mystery schools, and the way of seeing the world in certain parts, and so with certain people, is that you washed through the river of Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, or you could wash through the river of Nimson, which is the river of remembering. And these things are really important because right now we're always forgetting at all times. It's like Link in Zelda. It's his forever sleep. Link is just trying to remember the journey of him, uniting with his princess in the end. And so these things are real because we have to ask what is real. These eternal forces that we feel that possess us, like fear and anxiety and despair, or the virtuous ones like love and passion and brilliance and insight, strength. These are forces that move through us. And those things are far older than I. You know what I mean? Like, And them being far older than I, don't you think then that they've formulated not only some kind of egregore, its own autonomous entity that now gives to these forces that we've then termed archetypes? So it almost seems like these archetypes and forces are more real than you and I ever will be until we tap into those currents. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember these moments in my life where things dawned on me, where I was like, oh shit, this is not what I thought it was. It's actually more like this. And what you just described is one of them. I remember standing in my parents' kitchen and being like, hold on a second. If I really think it through, it seems like the idea of the thing has to come before the thing. Because for, let's say, a cup to come into being, for somebody to mold a cup out of clay, you have to have the potentiality of cupness. You have to have the ability of so then I was like, well, goddamn, maybe all of this, these forms, these archetypes, even ourselves, our very existence, it all exists as potential from the moment, I don't know, beginning of time even, or maybe the moment our logos, came into existence. You had to have the potential for all this stuff. And to me, the great question is, well, what is that potential? Does the potential itself have a form or a shape or a nature? Is it anything other than a space that can be filled by the infinite expressions of our being? Do you have any intuitions or thoughts on like what is the nature of that potential?
Yeah, what's up, Jugs? Thanks, pal. Thanks for listening tonight. I hope everyone checks out Twisted Bricks when we're done with the show, because his stuff is brilliant. Yeah, no, I definitely have. And that's why, okay, so the idea is that for me, is that there's many different frameworks of seeing these things. Because when it comes down to it, why I like the term philosopher is much more than just what the academics find themselves to be, like this ivory tower kind of philosopher who is trying to, find the smallest being or substance, or trying to find these things that are, and how to talk about them. You get the very Lockean philosophy, which is really dry and stale. But philosophia is that love of wisdom. It is divine madness. It's that passionate eros that moves through us. And so I believe what your question is like, what is it that moves through us? Just like what moves through the universe in that same way.
Yeah, potentially. These questions are hard to formulate sometimes. And I think in some ways I'm asking an impossible question.
No, I love impossible questions.
But I think so what is it that moves through us? I think that is a question, but it's also in a way, what do we move through? What is this thing we are moving through?
Right. That's a good question. Okay, so if one thing is what moves through us, which in the way I like to see it, just to finish that one up, is that it's like that Ein Sof Aur, that lightning bolt from the infinite blackness of the abyssal depths of the all thing, whatever that is it moves through like the different realms of creation, and that's why it signifies as the model of the tree of life in Kabbalah is one of the most brilliant that I like. What then is this is such a beautiful question, because it's almost like then we somehow have to talk about this like organic experience of the beautifulness of how things can manifest into the phenomenal form. I don't know. I think that's the best way, is because I'd signify it as I like the idea of it being some kind of realm that we're within. And I know those who listen to like the Sam Tripoli's tinfoil hat and things like that. Sam says it all the time. I think it's a realm, bro. But for me,
it's like Minecraft realms.
Yeah. For me, it's more like I love the idea of the school thing, right? That's what it always comes back to. This is a school. Well, no, it's more than that. That's why Dante wrote his divine comedies, right? Dante's Inferno, Paradiso, Purgatorio is written because he's trying to understand the integration of these ideas of like, what is the great chain of being? What is Plato getting at with his understanding of reality? Basically, And then at the same time, we're trying to understand how do planetary systems move through the world. So it's very Pythagorean in the great makeup of what is the cosmos. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea, because when Heidegger says things like thrownness, it's the idea is that I don't know because I've always been here. It's almost like asking, why is water wet? Well, it's just because it's like, I'm here now. So what do I do? And upon going through the what do I do, I can then come through and start to understand what this is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because Philip K. Dick talks about the simulation, right, is a more modern term, but he called it the hologram. Because what you do is you superimpose Heraclitus's view of everything moving at all times, right? The ever-changing changingness, and you get Parmenides' unchanging monad. And when you take these two philosophers, which they're pre-Socratic philosophers, they are the forefathers of our Socrates and Plato through the mouth of Socrates. That's when we start trying to understand of what this thing is because that's what the pre-Socratics were trying to do from the mythologies and the oral tradition of Homer and what was going on in that time frame, all the way through with the Babylonian traditions and all the different mystery schools and cults, Pythagorean, Orphic, on through. And so it's fascinating to try to get to then what is this thing that is going on. It is the same question as what is it that's pushing it through. I think that's where it comes to.
Yeah. If I may expand on that in my own way,
please.
There's a sort of terrifying potential, you could say, that lies at the bottom of the barrel. But the thing is, I don't think we can ever really properly conceive of what it is. But there's this idea that the universe is God attempting to know itself, or maybe not even attempting, maybe God knowing itself, that there is this thing called existence itself, and it is everything. It is truly everything. But you can't do much with everything. So it puts itself, it expands itself through very intimate and finely detailed and finely tuned channels of experience. And that's us, that's plants, that's bacteria. It's the everything like going through these finely tuned channels of experience. And, I wonder, like, how does that experience feed back into the creator, back into the monad? And what happens when, again, this is, I guess, my hypothetical framework. What happens when it gets all that experience, it harvests all that experience, it does every adventure, every possible adventure. Does it just chill there in the void and it's like, oh man, well now I'm bored again? And is it just an endless cycle of that? Like, it's hard, it's almost like perfect writer's block, or the author's perfect nightmare, where it's like, I can't think of a satisfying ending to this story. I am not sure one exists. How could you possibly find a satisfying ending to the story of everything? So that's just some stream of consciousness for you.
No, no, I love that. I've said it already. And you and I have talked about this a bunch. And this is the perfect time for these things to collide, is us together here. Because this is going to be a conversation that is continuing not only in your and I's life for the rest of your life, whether you like it or not, because you're stuck with me now, my friend. But also, this is a question that we all kind of come to, I think, sometime in our journey, and maybe not. Maybe that's my own projection. But I'm always talking about certain thinkers. And I'm going to go back to Heidegger again, because once I've read Heidegger all the way, late Heidegger, but once you read Being in Time, and it takes a lot to kind of conceptualize what's going on here, but it goes to exactly what he's trying to talk about. That's like what I'm always hitting on, is we're asking the wrong question. That's what Heidegger says. He goes, the problem isn't how do we go from your internal experience to an external, right? The Western philosophical tradition since Descartes has framed the problem of reality as a question about the relationship between a subject and an external world, right? That's how Descartes onward, subject to an external world, and how do we relate, right? And so we're always asking, like, what is this? Like kids, you pick it up. What's this? What's this? Who are you, right? And that goes back to the thing is like it seems like it's like then asking, because he uses his initial framework of doubting. So he's all like, who's the one who doubts? That's where you get the cogito. I think, therefore I am. But I think that, as well as other thinkers, is that question needs to be rethought, because that question has now become the worldview that we have lived with since the early 1600s. And it wasn't always like that.
Yeah, interesting.
And so in it not being always like that, we've fallen into a pit of despair and trying to understand our relationship with the world. Because what Heidegger does, and what a lot of these thinkers are doing, right? Read David Beth's work. We're trying to understand the pandaemonic. We're trying to understand our relationship with abyss. We're trying to understand how to not intellectualize and abstract everything. And so we come to a way of thinking that's not to, we're always trying to transcend being human, but how do we truly have the embodied experience of being in the world? And that's what Heidegger states, is he goes, okay, well, we got to go back to how his teacher Husserl talked about how we're always intentionally intending towards some kind of perceived thing. What is consciousness towards something, consciously intending towards something. And so now you have a bunch of hyphens there, right? In being in the world, you have a hyphen, being in the world. The hyphens, some would say, is doing the heavy lifting. Because I'm not now asking, what is this? Now we're asking, what is? And that switches from small b's, me and you, this hat back here in that book, and this cup, to what is being itself. And that comes to a big being, but it's not the Renaissance thinking all the way back to the idea of the chain of being. Agrippa's, it's not just Agrippa's, it's the Renaissance occult philosophy. Agrippa talked about it, the great chain of being. It's a hierarchical cosmic model. And so that goes back to what you're saying. A way of understanding these energies is seeing it through the great chain of being. And at the same time, having the understanding, if you go back to like Homer and what Julian Jaynes was talking about with his bicameral mind, is that when Achilles struck with the blow of Zeus, when he would strike somebody down, or the winds blew like that of Poseidon or whatever, right? Don't hate on how I'm saying it, get to the idea, is that now that's living embodied in the world, understanding that, I don't always have to have the individualistic way of experiencing things. Because once I understand, as Philip K. Dick says so eloquently when asked in a lecture that he was giving by a student, a question was asked by the student. They asked, what is reality? Because that's the point of Philip K. Dick's work.
Yeah.
What is reality, and what is the nature of this thing that we're in? And his answer to that question was, reality is that which exists when you're not, when you stop believing in it. Reality is that which exists when you stop looking. It's just there. And so now we have to get rid of the idea of what is reality, and understand that it's not my experience, man. You know what I mean? What is reality? Well, it's whatever I want it to be. No, that's lazy. It's not, because that's subject object. You got this dualism again. It's not about whatever you feel. Morality isn't just about however you feel. There is an objective truth. And when we start to get to the ancient thinkers, we get to them talking about what truth is, and there's different words for it. Aletheia, I'm always talking about. It's the Greek term for unconcealedness. Heidegger talks about it as that when we're taking something from being covered over, from falsity, or from like phenomenal reality, we don't understand it, and we bring it into a clearing, shine some sun on it, it reveals itself. And that's a way of understanding how truth works. Instead of finding truth and holding it, it is experienced.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like from what you're saying, you could, like a lot of people ask, what is reality? And it seems like maybe the way many people answer that question, they're not actually answering what is reality. They're answering what is one framework through which you could view the experience of reality. Like that's so much better. That's beautiful. Yeah, and reality itself, I think that's cool what you said. Like there is an objective reality. Like there's a thing that's here. Like there is something, and we are a part of it. Our experience is a part of it. But in another way, another thing that what you're saying is making me think of is Plato's allegory of the cave, unsurprisingly, but almost as if like you're in the cave, and then the people are doing the puppet show. They're in the cave too, and you get out of the cave, maybe even get out of a second cave, and you're like, okay, surely there are no more caves.
Yeah,
and
that's the Matrix, right? That's the movie. That's the three.
But then it's like, oh shit, the cave is coming from inside the walls. It's in my mind. There's a cave. It's an inverted cave in your brain.
Exactly it.
On how you're thinking of this. And it's funny because I keep, in some ways, I listen to you and I'm like, oh man, you're using a lot of words to tell me that there's not a satisfying, simple soundbite here. But it is so
beautiful.
remarkable to explore this question. And like I do think I am grasping what you are saying. But of course, in my own way, through my own lens. But there is this difficulty in breaking things down in a simple way of what this whole fucking thing is.
Yeah, beautiful. That's beautiful. Again, I couldn't have said what you just said better than myself. Because that is the whole idea when we're reading these things. Why people get so skipped up on all of it is because we want answers. And Aleister Crowley wrote a beautiful essay called "The Hunchback and the Soldier," and it's basically that whole thing is about. There will always be more hunchbacks than soldiers. The soldier represented as the exclamation point, and the hunchback represented as the question. There will always be more questions than answers. And so I do highly recommend everyone go to Google after the show, and just read that PDF. It's fascinating. It's in his Equinoxes back in the day when he was doing his AA stuff. And so it is a really important, and for my own journey, that's why Aleister Crowley has been so brilliant and important. It's because because he's helping you learn how to philosophize in his own right, ask certain questions in another way. Yes, Aleister Crowley has a hideous, terrible side of himself. I completely agree that he wasn't 100%. He wasn't a perfect man. There's a lot of myth out there about how bad he may have been, and that goes back to let's not confuse the map for the territory, and let's understand how people who are maybe writing and living in a magical, symbolic set. Also, if you're not understanding the kinds of signs and symbols, then you're going to mistake a lot of what he did. No, literally his face. Yeah. Well, he got a lot of play in that early 1900s, but you're right. The older he got, the more he was a little more hideous. But back online there is, thank you, Tara. Thank you. Always love the comments, everyone. Subscribe, like, and share to MagusintheMedia and Twisted Bricks. I just appreciate everybody out there. This conversation with Christian is things that him and I do when we're together. We don't get to hang out enough, but Christian and I are going to be doing this regularly, whether he likes it or not. And so it's a fun way to go out there and try to understand reality. Is that if I can understand that while reading things like the Republic, as much as Plato's not an easy read, but if you just struggle through it, you learn something, because that's what it means to be. To have passion and to, have the want to change, is that we must struggle to learn, because it's not like the Matrix where you can just plug something into the back of your head and I know Kung Fu, because I learned Kung Fu, but it's been through struggle and toil. And so if I can fucking do it, anybody could do it. But the idea is that it's asking you to learn how to do philosophy, to ask the questions that are getting back to first principles. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If fucking 0.5 principles,
Yeah, the principles that are the basic frameworks of how to make an individual who can actually understand what it means to vote. Mm-hmm. What it means to have a family, to be a good husband or to be a good wife, to be a friend or a student. These are questions because it becomes back to how to live a virtuous life. Yeah. It comes back to to understanding death and the dying process, which is what the mystics in mystery school initiates and the philosophers in the past were trying to understand was their own place in the world. Not what is this place, but why is this place? And what am I here to do while I'm here? That's that great expulsion from the ancients and beforehand with the oral traditions and the mystery schools, is that all of a sudden something happened. I'm not putting 100% blame on the Abrahamic traditions, but they fuck shit up. You know what I mean? They fuck shit up. And the reason they fuck shit up is because these institutions start to hoard knowledge and slow down time. It goes back to the time shit, dude.
Oh, dude, yeah. Yeah, I have pondered that a lot. You know, I have people really close to me who are like quite religious, and I see the way in which they are religious, and it's both beautiful and frustrating because it is this structured sort of practice. It's a structured, religious belief system and practice, and I can't help at times but feel that it is both enabling them to express their, let's say, faith, their spirituality in a way that is beautiful to them. But I can't help but feel that it also has built-in restraints. It's like a governor, in a car.
It is.
You cannot go this fast. Yes. You're going to stay here.
Yeah.
And these concepts, they're not for you. Those are bad concepts to explore. That's satanic. That's Luciferian, or that's that is hogwash.
No, I completely agree. Because what happens is, and I will always balance out the sides, you either get far fundamentalist, fundamental religious individuals, or occultists even. You get this fundamentalism in your esoteric, anything on that side of things, and then you get the fundamentalist materialists, who are the science nerds and the tech bros who claim to be this religious thing, as Peter Thiel is going around talking about the Antichrist, but the Antichrist is anybody who's trying to destroy AI.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? So the Antichrist is trying to destroy AI when it looks like the AI is trying to destroy us through you fucking, and then you got, and so it's a fascinating thing where we're dodging bullets on either side, but both are much needed. It's just the extreme, which is what goes back to the mystic and the magic. I didn't pull this up, but I want to. It goes back to the book that I think when we were talking about trying to figure out your place in the world. And so Angel Miller, interviewing him on, already brought up once, interviewing him on Saturday. I'll put that out hopefully not much longer after that. The Path of the Warrior Mystic, being a man in an age of chaos.
Yeah,
and so that book actually was quite helpful for myself. And Angel Miller, brilliant author, scholar, also martial artist. He's well known in the occult realms. And I just think that his work kind of speaks for itself, is how do we do it? And he's talking about these archetypes and how do we truly move through the world by understanding how these psychic structures are these kind of forces that move through us, and they take form through these certain structures, and then are like, basically we are possessed by these things. The problem with Carl Jung and the psychic and this psychological phenomena is that when it gets wrapped too much, and this is what Angel's trying to get away from, and David Beth's trying to get away from, and definitely he's trying to. Angel Miller just wrote a new book, and that's the one I'm interviewing him on, The Supernatural Woman and the Male Initiate. Is that what he's trying to really get at? Is we're trying to understand how are these things actually embodied in the world, and what do they look like when these things are actually real, right? Instead of the feminine being a projection of your own unconscious anima, which is a very Jungian way of understanding our experience of our dreams and our reality. What if it's not your unconscious? What is not your projection? And what does that mean? What if you actually experienced a real phenomena in the dream realm? Because the dream realm is not just plainly a psychic realm. It's a psychic phenomenal realm. It's a psychophysio phenomenal realm. So all of a sudden it's a psychical, it's a physiological, and and it's a phenomenal, it's a like an actual material place.
Yeah. That's a lot to digest.
But it is. And why it is because it's going back to this thing we've been talking about this whole time. Being a craftsman, crafting worlds, not just creating, but discovering worlds with materiality, with the phenomenal world. And as you do so, this expulsion of creation, art, and magic coalesce, and now it becomes a kind of a divine moment. It's a different way of viewing it. It becomes true discovery, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I do. I just got to give a shout out to Just My Game. I know he and I have collaborated on stuff, and I know he's big into this subject, esoteric philosophy. So I can see you're excited, Joseph.
Nice.
But
thank you, Just My Game Studios, for showing up. Always here for conversation. Nice. What's he do?
So he creates the miniatures, Just My Game figures. So they're like every kind of they're resin printed accessories for minifigures, and he actually created and his team designed the Archangel figures, who are these like super soldiers in the sequel film I'm doing right now. So we've
awesome.
been working together on that. So it's really a fun partnership.
That's amazing.
Yeah, autistic and a vet.
Oh boy. Hey, we got to be something, you know, autistic and a vet, and somebody who can create from nothing. It's beautiful. Your own Demiurge, my friend. Beautiful. No, I think that's fascinating. And what you know, and this is something that's really important, and I'm always trying to not impress, but imprint upon everyone, myself included, because once we can see this place as how, you know, why Dasein is such an important thing, being in the world as we, you know, sit upon a hill looking upon the horizon is what is the kind of imagery Heidegger ends up using. And what we're doing is we're looking upon the horizon. A horizon, what is it? It's something that never ends, but it's continually out there. Something that I can never truly experience, but I'm experiencing from a distance. And that image is like death. I'm continually looking towards death. And that, through that existential, he calls it existence, through that existential experience of death, we then can truly understand how to live a life, which I think is really important. And he's also hitting on a lot of Taoism, ancient philosophy, Parmenides, Plato, obviously. But that Bushido code, I think, is really important. In the beginning,
you say the experience of death, what do you mean, like in theory, or like the knowing that you are going to die, or what do you mean?
One?
Yeah.
The knowing that you are going to die, and it is always upon the horizon, meaning you never know when it's truly going to come around the corner at the same time.
Yeah, and that is truly, I think, one of the most remarkable aspects of this life we live. And, you know, some people might argue that is really the purpose of the veil of forgetting, and like the unique element of this realm, let's say, that we are at least currently inhabiting, is that it feels like it's a one shot. Like we don't remember our previous incarnations. No. We don't remember the characters we've played before this. All I remember is, like, you know, being a little kid at 4 years old named Christian Stensley and getting a little bit bigger and a little bit smarter and a little bit more handsome every day.
I've seen it. I've seen it. Every time I see him, he's more gorgeous man with the side swoop and the beautiful Henley.
What can I say?
Yeah, what can I say? That's brilliant. Well, nice. I think what an evening. What an evening. We've kind of traveled across the universe. I think what's fascinating, something we didn't talk about, but we should real quick, is this interrelation between this AI agenda that we have going on and alien disclosure happening at the same time. You know, isn't it such a fascinating topic? It's like, what's fascinating about it is that they coincide at the Tech Bros, as we've all probably heard Tim Dillon talk about how, and you can look it up, Sam Altman, using AI to talk to Sumerian gods or demons, as the Christians, as the Abrahamic traditions want to state. Yeah,
dude. I think there are so many ways you can interpret what's happening right now. I absolutely believe in non-human intelligence and the sense that it has interacted with humanity across the millennia. The question to me is, like, how is the government, the CIA, all of these the puppeteers, how are they going to try to spin this? And isn't it convenient that disclosure happens right when AI video recreated like footage is just nearing perfection?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. That's so true.
I think we are going to enter an age where we don't know, we can't say for certain that anything we see recorded on a screen, anything that's told to us is true. And I think if we want to look at a silver lining here, that we are just going to have to, it's going to get local. We're going to have to be like friends and neighbors. I mean, to put it in a very simple way, and what you see, what you know inside, that's what's going to matter. And what you see on Fox News, or see whatever, you know, pick your media station, I don't care.
Yeah.
And what you see televised, I hope we just abandon that, because I mean, maybe you could argue that for the importance of knowing what's maybe happening elsewhere in the world, but it's going to become such a mess of what's true, what's not, what's a psyop. Everything feels like a psyop to me these days. And in some ways,
everything is a psyop.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, because they don't want us to talk about things that are always playing their hand over here. It's like, oh, look at this now over there. Oh, Epstein files. Oh no, Trump's gonna save you. No, not today. He's actually for Israel.
Yeah,
oh wait, disclosure files. But no, not really.
It's such a freaking clown show, and I almost can't believe that I did see like on, I think it was on Fox, like I just saw a clip on Reddit of like the guy, one of the hosts, talking about like the 4 different species of alien, and I was like, how did we get here? How did I find myself in this timeline?
No, that's why Magus, I'm gonna be talking about all these things. I agree. No, it's wild. You know, once upon a time I was a little boy and I was all like, wouldn't it be great after you watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you know, live action, one of the greatest movies of all time, the original. And then all of a sudden you're like, wouldn't it be great if all the X-Men got movies, and then we got some X-Men movies, and then you're like, wouldn't it be great if Batman movies were great, and then some of them were good, some were bad, and then all of a sudden it's like, now I don't know. Now it's like, wouldn't it be great if they would talk about different kind of reptilian species of aliens on both mainstream media? And I was like, no, I never said that. That's not what I wanted. I didn't care about that. Like it's like watching watching the news today is like watching like new, like somebody discover like the occult and the new age for the first time, and like the spiritualism, religion. It's like an amalgamation of talking points of right-wing religious fundamentalism and like the like more liberal understanding of like, oh my God, all is one type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It fucking blows my mind that that's on TV right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. And in some ways in some ways it's terribly exciting, because I'm like, oh my God, look at these podcasters, look at the conversations people are having. You can't get away with not addressing the alien elephants in the room anymore. And you know, that means Epstein, Israel, UFOs, whatever reality is itself, like everything is on the table, and you see it on every major show. Like they can't not address it. And so it's this remarkable unfolding of a conversation, of a global conversation. It's very exciting to see. But you do feel like in some of these contexts, and this is going to sound like holier than thou, but like you're watching people communicate with like baby babble, and it's like, okay, it's, you guys are close. And I say that not knowing what the truth is myself. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I have been interested in. So I see. And I'm sure you listen to me talk about some stuff, and you're like, "Oh, he's getting there. He'll get there eventually. You know, he's on his way." And I do feel like I'm on my way, and I'm very curious where you were 10 years ago.
Yeah, you don't want to know. Well, 10 years. It was more like 20. But don't you worry. I'm not to stop you, but I can tell you exactly your love of the raw materials. I remember reading when I was like 20 years ago. That all kind of came all kinds of different philosophy. So I got lucky because I was also going. I then found my way into philosophy, but I had a friend who gave me the mythical thumb drive that had Crowley, Blavatsky, Kenneth Grant, Robert Anton Wilson, Timothy Leary, and so I instantly was kind of pushed into a current and a stream where not everyone falls into that, being able to find all these PDFs of these things at the same time, taking large amounts of hallucinogens and entheogens at that time. But by myself, it was like, you know, it was one of those things where I was trying to, all of a sudden you have your initial experience, right? Mine was already a love of all these things, right? The myth of like folklore and storytelling and great movies and shows that were science fiction and fantasy, as well as then getting, loving, what else was it? It was then, and then you add all that love and that seeking, right? Me being a farm kid who kept looking upon the fucking horizon, wanting more to life. And you're asking yourself, I love what I have here, but there's something else going on. And so there was that call to adventure, which was that little spark inside me that kept feeling something more was happening. And all I craved was gnosis. This idea that we have been hitting around this whole time of Gnosticism. Gnosticism comes from the term gnosis, which is direct knowledge or direct experience. And this is what is really important. And this isn't exactly what I'm going to hit on right here with Just My Game Studio, with the irregularities with the Abrahamic tradition, because I don't remember exactly what that was. But what I do know, and what I will always say, and it is part of that, is that the Abrahamic traditions have been locked in, and Nietzsche talked about it with his master-slave dichotomy. They have locked us into their version of things, instead of telling us all that we can experience God and this mystical state ourselves. And upon doing so, if you want, you can tap into an occult tradition and the Western esoteric tradition, which has had adepts trying to understand these mysteries for a very long time. And upon doing so, you can find a tradition in them, a real living tradition that talks about these things, but doesn't just talk about them, now helps you experience them in your everyday life, not just in a temple, not just as an initiation level that's with a bunch of dudes or women at a place in the fucking coven or in a Golden Dawn temple or even a Masonic temple and lodge. All have their places and things, but it's the real experience of you in the world that is where your mastership is needing to take place. And I think the Abrahamic traditions have been trying to squash individuals into little boxes, just like the scientific materialists squash us into little boxes, because how do you control a population? Is you control the moral structure of the things they believe to be true and false, as well as good and bad. And so it's really important, I'll hit on that in a second, it's really important that we have gnosis, and each individual wakes up according to their own path. Of course, there are forces that we cannot even fathom to understand. That's why we have such arts as astrology and different things like that, so we can understand the forces that were there upon our birth, thus how we experience the world, these frameworks and structures of existence. And then if we can understand the internal landscapes of those things, but then take that into actually living in the world, it seems like the Inquisition, the institutes have their own levels of inquisition, because if people were to truly wake up from the matrix of their own mind, then the time masters, the Demiurge time masters who are controlling our worldviews, the time space of our own reality, internally, externally, this thing, then all of a sudden it can get out of their grasp, because these people have been controlled for so long. So it goes back to the idea of the reptilian bloodlines. We don't have to think of them as reptiles anymore. We can think of them as families through time, royal families through time, as well as corporations now integrated with those things, are the ones that think they have this divine right of kings and that they can control things because they have a bigger view of the history of our planet and the people within it.
The blue bloods.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, right. It is interesting that they're called blue bloods and cold-blooded reptiles. You think cold blue.
Well, they call them, no, the reason, yes, I get that. No, and you're right. But also blue, why it's called the Blue Lodge in Masonry, and why in many myths like Krishna being blue, and a lot of these avatars of higher consciousness, these avatars of larger experience, these adepts through the ages or higher intelligent beings, they're blue because that's the color of that's dictating that they are a higher level of intelligence, or whatever that means.
Yeah,
in the mythologies.
If you want to look at it from a chakra perspective, the indigo chakra, the blue chakra, is the third eye, if I'm not mistaken.
Blue is your throat chakra, and then you have indigo, and then violet, the third. Yeah, but indigo, you're still hitting there. And why you're close though. It's just the wrong model. So blue, what they're talking about with that, and we're using the framework of the Kabbalistic tree of life. What we're hitting on then is that blue is Chesed or Jupiter. And through those lenses, you can see Jupiter, Chesed being the fourth Sephirah, before you climb through the abyss into the three supernals, which aren't, it's not, that's a higher intelligence as we're trying to work into this realm. So it's another way of viewing those things. So
you're gonna have to recommend me some reading for that, because the Tree of Life Kabbalah stuff, it goes over my head so quickly.
It should. No, it definitely should.
I want to say about the like Abrahamic traditions, and like Christianity is the one that I know something about. I do find it interesting how the church historically, and I would say like even today, condemns magic and occultism, and I think bad thoughts, like it feels like a pejorative or like a negative term in some way.
Yeah.
I'm like, you mean dark wizards, or like people who are messing with stuff they shouldn't. Like that is the programming that I have. And it's really interesting for me, because I'm like, well, yeah, that an effective control structure would get you to just like be like oil and water with something like that. And obviously I think occultism, like even magical practice is like literally every other thing in the cosmos, which is you can use it for, you can use your car to drive to a charity event, or you can plow through a street full of people. There are both paths you can take.
Yeah.
But we've been programmed to be like, oh, it equals bad. Like those are freaks. They're witches. They should be burned at the stake.
Well, do you guys think that's what Catholics and Protestants did? Protestants burnt witches. Catholics, outlawed everything else. And so it is one of those things, but it goes to both sides, because either it's outside the Bible and it shouldn't be done because of that's only for Jesus, right? That's only for Jesus or the saints, the apostles, instead of it being for everybody else. Or you go to the opposite side, or it's evil, right, with that. Or at the opposite side, it's meaningless. They're like, that's not real. It's hogwash. You're just, play acting, you're LARPing. And there are those. Yeah, and there are those. And that's the thing, is that's why we have to hone our critical thinking skills and hone our ability to reason, use the wise mind, be strong, and see the beauty, and see the sacred aesthetic beauty within all things, because we don't want to fall to either extreme. But yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's just continuing to do conversations like this to help kind of set the map straight, because there are dark sorcerers out there trying to impose their will upon the world. But then at the same time, there are those of us who see the beauty in all things and are more on the light path of stuff, and there's not the right word for it. It's just people trying to be better in a way that's using all four elements harmonized. So then we're not possessed by a power that is destructive. Yeah.
Dude, well said. And I just want to say I'm grateful for you being willing to have this conversation. It's fun to talk about this stuff. And in many ways, I've we're talking about subjects that I feel compelled to discuss with you, with others, to have conversations I think the world should be having. And I haven't always known how do I have these conversations as Mr. Twisted Bricks? But this is a perfect segue into it. So I am grateful.
Well, good. Well, no, I'm grateful for you, my friend. These conversations can't happen without two people or more, right? I can do this on my own, and people will listen. Hopefully I can do this with somebody, and then we can actually have a true dialogue and have that Platonic back and forth, that Socratic method of question, answer, and there's always going to be more questions than answers, and I'm not going to have all the answers. And then we go back and forth that way. So I fucking love you, man. This is brilliant. This has been a great conversation. Thank you all for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, and share, not only to MagusintheMedia, but head on over to Twisted Bricks. Christian is brilliant. Support him and all he does, because if we're not creating real art, somebody or some fucking monster or AI will do it for us. Twisted Bricks, Christian, tell them where you can be found.
Yeah, I can be found. Just look up Twisted Bricks on YouTube. You'll find me. You could go to twistedbricks.com. There's some fun stuff there. And also twisted.bricks on Instagram. And all my socials can be linked. YouTube is a good home base for me. So find me there. And I am the nicest Demiurge. So come pay me a visit.
He is the nicest Demiurge. It's so true. The man is brilliant, coming into his own, already a seasoned vet with his brilliant channel and everything that he's doing. You are for the small business and the young artist and the somebody who's trying to create on YouTube, trying to be a content creator, create their own journey, be more than that, be somebody who's also, you've got a beautiful wife now, and you two are heading onto a fantastic journey into this world. I couldn't be more happy for you and everything you do. And this is a now forever, as long as YouTube will have us, MagusintheMedia and Twisted Bricks will integrate and try to do our best to help. Wake up, Neo. Wake up, Link. And crawl ourselves out of the cave, kicking and screaming. So I am coming out with tomorrow morning. Everybody listening, just make sure you know tomorrow morning interview is going to drop. Interview conversation with the great David Beth of Theon Press. He came out with the book, The Black Pilgrimage. The book is amazing, and I think everyone should get it. It's the most beautiful book. I've actually one of the most beautiful books I've ever held. This is The Black Pilgrimage by David Beth. It's amazing. Theon Press also did Ritual and Epiphanies by Peter Mark Adams, something else everyone else should get. So if you haven't watched that interview that I already did, make sure you do. But David Beth, it's an amazing conversation. It's about his book. It's about why modern occultism has strayed from the path. And so that's a great one. Also going to be coming out with Colin Conkright's interview here soon. He just wrote his book, Universalism. So everyone support American Esoteric. Obviously, the Occult Rejects and MagusintheMedia are integrated in doing our thing. We're both separate, but we're both homies. And so I'll be going on there. Nick's coming on here, as in, if you're not doing anything at 11 o'clock a.m. Thursday, which is tomorrow, noon Eastern time, next time, we're going to be going through the Tucker Carlson interview with Sean Stone. And so I think it's really important because that he's talking about, he's supposedly Sean Stone, the ex-Freemason, talking about demon possession, Hollywood, Satanism, fucking occult nonsense. It's ridiculous. The few clips I've already heard. I myself have studied extensively Freemasonry. Might eventually look to become a Freemason because I just if that calls, that's what we do. We do what the genius calls, the higher genius. And at the same time, there's so much nonsense going on, being pushed by that strange Christian sects going on right now. And so we're going to be going through it. The Occult Rejects and MagusintheMedia going through and talking about, and we're going to be actually playing the interview, and Nick and I are going to respond to it. I'm going to set the record straight, because if I don't do it, who the fuck will? Might as well be MagusintheMedia. So as much as I don't even like all of the things Tucker Carlson does, he is having enlightening conversations right now. And so he is, I think, doing some good, but at the same time, those of us stray from the path if we haven't had a real mystical experience, or maybe being paid off by the CIA or whatnot. I don't know, but that's why we create channels, so we can have that conversation. Many more amazing interviews and amazing conversations. Eventually video essays, talking about manga, talking about movies. It's been fantastic.
I'm excited. I'm going to watch that, dude. I watched most of that interview on Tucker, and I was very curious. I'll be very curious to hear your take on it.
Perfect. So Thursday, and if this is already in the future and you're in the past, check out it on my channel Thursday at noon Central Time, noon Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Central Time. We're going to be doing it, so you might as well do it live, and that's the most authentic you can get in an age of inauthenticity. Thanks, Christian. This was fantastic.
Thank you, Brandon. You have a good night.
Great. We're going to do great. Thank you, everybody out there. You are all fantastic. Thank you, and good night.